Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Russ Godin, how are we doing?
I'm good, Pete, thank you.
So you've arrived in country as part of the heavy team exercise. We're in Kosovo again. What's the team been faced with? What was the travel like over?
So yeah, reasonably good travel period over. London Luton Airport pulled out all the stops for us, made sure we got through without any problems, right the way through from check-in, all the way through security, right the way through to departures and onto the plane. Really good when we arrived again, straight through. The authorities here in Kosovo were absolutely superb, got us through the airport really quickly. We certainly met our military colleagues from the KSF, the Kosovo Security Force here, that took us through to the NATO K4 base, where we were helicoptered in to this area for
First time on the helicopter for a lot of the members of the team. Pretty intense one. So we had 2 drops here on the Kosovo site on the helicopters.
Yeah, that certainly in the history of UKISAR, it's one of the things we've been heavily involved with is use of helicopters. Certainly back in Haiti in 2010, and prior to that, certainly with the earthquakes out in Pakistan. Certainly for the new members of the team, obviously they're experiencing that for the first time unless they've got a military background. But you could see the excitement and the fear at the same time.
It was a balance,
I think you caught some great footage of some people.
Oh mate, it was awesome.
But yeah, it's a great experience for those new team members to understand that actually, when we deploy as UKISAR, the wheel that deploys with us to support us in doing the tasks we're faced with.
So to talk about that deployment of UKISAR, the aspect of the virtual OSOC, so when did that get kick-started and what information were you faced with before you came into the country and what is it like now you're sort of here?
Okay, yeah, so the virtual OSOC, obviously part of the GDAC system. It's the system that sits as an information platform, a hub, for all of the deploying teams to understand the situation in country, what they may be faced with, obviously booking and out. Certainly as soon as the earthquake happened and we had the notification for the scenario, through the official channels, through FCDO, that comes into myself as a national coordinator or one of the duty team. And obviously we go through a stage of monitoring before standing by and then before deploying on agreement. Certainly for this scenario, it had to be a request, an official request from the Kosovoan government, asking for support from the UN, and then obviously as a UN classified heavy team we offered that support and it was accepted, and obviously we deployed.
So that aspect of the classification, we're here sort of prepping again for our RER. We're lucky enough to be joined by some of our mentors.
Yep.
What are the aspects that we're going to try and achieve over these next few days? What do we need to look to hit that RER classification?
Okay, I think that there's 2 real aims and objectives for ourselves, not only as the capability but UKISAR, is obviously to prepare for the RER, but also to demonstrate, develop, nurture the talent we've got coming through from brand new team members. I mean, 4 or 5 of the members, as you know, Peter, it's their first week of activity. You can see how keen they are, but certainly that's balanced against the experience already within the team from some of the longer serving members. So this is a great opportunity not only to participate in a realistic exercise in a great venue, you've seen the venue yourself, to develop those teams, but also to have a look at that gap analysis for ourselves ready for the IR. Certainly from a mentoring process, that gives a great opportunity for our mentors to have a look at us, a good honest open approach. Certainly they're picking up a couple of areas that we're rusty on, and we're going to be rusty because certainly coming out of the back of the pandemic, we're going through that period now of that fine tuning and developing new team members. So that
ball really has started rolling quite well, though. You've had a series of good exercises now, because like you say, it was, I think for a lot of teams, it was like a cold start post-pandemic because we had to all social distance and all that sort of jazz. But now we're 2 or 3 exercises deep. This is the first big time teams really got together, isn't it? With 70, 80 plus people. We're lucky enough to have some of our admin team as well. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. And certainly out of the back of Bridgetown at the Bury site early last year, we're looking to build upon that success. Certainly, we identified some areas there that, we could have performed better. And that's the whole purpose of exercising, is that when it comes for real, we're as best prepared as we can be. But certainly, the mentors will be looking at, they'll be looking at the checklist where we grading us against that checklist, and hopefully we'll come out with a good result from it. But I'm not in fear because, we have to make mistakes to learn. And certainly the newer team members, as keen as they are, they will make mistakes on this, And it's a great opportunity for everybody really to focus on the task ahead. Again, we're together. It's international. We learn so much from international deployments. Certainly the weather is great. It's really lovely and warm. Certainly we haven't got our own cache of equipment, Not against our better judgment. We did try. However, we've got what we've got here, and it's realistic. Certainly back in the days of Haiti, our cache of equipment was left at Dominican Republic, and certainly for 4 days of that deployment, we were with bare hands or what equipment we can. This is replicating that learning.
100%.
Certainly, the base of operations, as you can see it now, is not as normal process for us as we normally have it. We haven't got some of the luxuries. Certainly, we're going to spend in a little bit of time cleaning out the showers that have been made available to us and the toiletries.
Lucky to have them as well, though.
When you think about it, this is realistic. If you're preparing for an earthquake where people have lost everything, just having that little bit of harness for a few days, it's the least we can give to some of those communities.
Look forward to seeing them the next few days.
Thanks for your time, Pete. Thank you.
Cheers, brother. Jim Davidson, how are you doing, brother?
Not too bad, yeah. I had a good day so far.
So you're in charge of Blue 2 as part of this Kosovan heavy team rescue. You got on site, set up the base of operations. What are we looking at here?
So our first task was to come over and potentially clear the obstructions to this medium girder bridge that was over a void that's blocking our main entry into the point. So this was deemed at Alpha 1 Alpha, the bridge area, which was actually, Alpha 1 Alpha was the 2 trees and the car that was blocking it. We then had 2 further cars mid-span on the bridge, and then we could see equipment in some containers at the other side that we wanted to secure. So from a hazard perspective, what were your sort of considerations when you came up to this? You had a small team, the rest of everybody else were getting other things ready. What were your thoughts? So initially the brief was that we were just going to look at the trees. We weren't going to progress too far into the job. I wasn't too concerned about contamination of the crew at this point because it was just a size up on what we could do. We saw fairly quickly that actually we could do a fair bit of work. So one of the positives we learn out of this is actually within our team, we need to have some small tools available, and one of them should either be small folding hand saws like you see in gardens, preferably the silkies. We've talked about this in Lancs before, and just have a few of them embedded. They can go in the packs, but you pretty much saw before that we delimbed a tree in prep to move it within 5 minutes. Some of them are, 2-inch branches as well. They're fairly effective. You can go through some quite substantial stuff with it. Yeah, that folding wood saw I've got is quite a basic little bushcraft one, but it's just time and time again it's shown that you're in a confined space and you need to make an adjustment to a timber shore without sending someone off down a tunnel. You can just reach in and you've got something that works really well in confined space. So that's a good learning outcome. Working with the structural engineers, we looked at the bridge. So their concern was that it's a medium girder bridge. Generally will be a 10 metre span. They believe this one was overspanned, so actually it was unsupported over something that looked closer to 15 metres. So initially, with the brief that we had, we were looking at trying to remove the 2 vehicles that were mid-span out the way to reduce that sort of deflection in the centre. They're 2 fairly small hatchback vehicles, one bit over 1 tonne each probably. Yeah, if that. So, but basically it's just to reduce that deflection. So we cracked on with that, and then the plan was we were going to actually shore that bridge in preparation because of the amount of deflection that it had. Once we moved the cars, we then did another scene assessment with the structural engineers, and at that point they said for pedestrian access only, which is all we've got at the moment, they're happy with the bridge can take that kind of load. Because the matting on the bridge, it's not timber decked, it's just rubber matting, we just basically created a safe access through with just hazard marking tape so that no one's going to fall through it, and we've just been running backwards and forwards, hopefully progressing, and we've done quite well. We've been pulled in a few different directions, but the team, we've got a good attitude. They know they understand the sort of nature of the beast, that we're just going to get pulled around a bit and just to keep the humour going, stay on point to what we're going to do when it changes. Love it. Thank you, Jim. Today's podcast was brought to you by our friends over at Willingwood Watches. On the 27th of April, Willingwood Watches launched their new limited edition watch, the Bronze Triumph Jubilee. This was launched to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee this year, and it's the first time ever they have produced a bronze version of their beloved Swiss-made Triumph collection. They are using specially repurposed purple hose, that's easy for me to say, and still keeping it in keeping with the bronze Swiss-made chronograph watch. There is no better way to commemorate the Queen's Jubilee with that plum violet, but of course you can get your combination of the straps as well. They've got the red, the blue, the yellow, the green. I'm sure you are well aware of Willingwood Watches. They make those incredible luxury watches from upcycled firefighting equipment. They have been with us since the very origins of the podcast, and you can find out more from them by heading over to willingwoodwatches.com. Now back to the show. Jim Chaston.
So, Jim, what sector are you in charge of at the minute, mate? What's the crack? What are we seeing as part of this heavy rescue? We're about, 16 hours in from yesterday, is it?
Yeah, something like that. So I'll give you from the start. So we were tasked with Alpha Sector, which had been completed on an ASR 1s pretty much as we were flying in by helicopter.
Okay.
Also using Google Map imagery. So on approaching the sector, we came across a number of quick work sites.
What was Alpha Sector known to be prior to the earthquake?
So Alpha Sector was a bridge, a factory, an area of residential houses,
Okay.
continuing completely on to the embassy. So on approaching the sector, we already had some work started from the previous day, which was some clearance work on a bridge. We then come across a factory which was deemed unsafe. So that was building marked and fed back into command, and the requirements for that one sent in.
Where's that?
We then come across a road blockage, and we were led to believe that that had to be cleared for further on into the deployment. We are really struggling with getting chainsaws working at the moment due to lack of chain oil, but we're close to that at the moment. It hasn't hampered operations because that's only vehicular access. We've managed to get past it.
So, for people that are unfamiliar, you landed in country without your cache, didn't you? Without your equipment cache. So you came across a series of pieces of equipment when you got here, and the team have had to go through some tool fam and do as you can with what you've got, relying on people's experiences and
so
familiarity.
it replicates really well the Haiti earthquake.
Okay.
Where when we basically landed in Port-au-Prince, and we had to go into Haiti in smaller planes, so we had to decant off what we were on and go into smaller planes. What happened then was the whole search and rescue world wanted to land at Port-au-Prince Airport, which had a fracture in it, so the runway was shorter than what it should have been.
Yep.
So the thing you never want to happen happened, and the search and rescue crews landed before command, and also before the equipment. From memory, I think we went the first 48 hours without anything other than what we were carrying.
Wow.
Didn't stop us. We went out. This was basically where the whole ASR process come from. We went out like we always did. We were given a sector from the Lima and got to work. Now, the sector there was probably about half the size of London, so that gives you an idea of scale of what we were working in. And the crews walked the streets and found work.
So when you say working with the Lima, for people unfamiliar with the Lima, what's that?
Yeah, so the local emergency medical association, they're the ones basically that we tie in with.
Okay.
We try and be as diplomatic as possible with those so that we don't make them feel inadequate.
Okay.
We're there to help them and also offer them any advice that we can bring to the deployment. So pretty much all taskings in the early stages come from the Lima in liaison with the OSOC once the OSOC gets established. And from there, all the work requirements go into those and then get shipped out to all the teams that start to build in country. So the teams in Haiti walked the streets, and we were picking up pry bar, scaffold poles, anything we could find really that was lying in the street. And all was good really, because we did manage to do 2 successful rescues. Mia, which was the entombed, I think she was a 6-year-old girl, and my crew, we did a very elderly local gentleman, which was 3 stories down in a pancake collapse, and we actually managed to get down through a party wall. So with hand tools, we managed to chip down through a block party wall, down 2 levels. We found our skinniest member on the team, which wasn't me, who then managed to get into the compartment. He had to go through the back of a wardrobe and then through, if you can imagine, a plastic wash basket, which was compressed on its side. He then had to take a Leatherman to the base of that and then crawled through that, which is why he was our smallest member of the team. Got to the gentleman, extricated the gentleman back through the wash basket, back through the wardrobe, and then up the party wall. Rescue. But basically, it just goes to show that you don't always need 30, 40, 50 tons of
Equipment.
high-end equipment to be any good.
We do like to make things super, super complex, and it's trying to strike that balance between being really sexy with all the kit and it being a limitation. I mean, we've just been talking about variations of gauges over there and which one should be most appropriate, and that's not to say that's not safe and correct, but
if we look at it in modern-day Interag practices, we were a light team.
Yeah.
So we thought we were going as a heavy team. That didn't manifest because we didn't have the equipment turn up. So we basically went out as a light team. If that was to happen now, with the latest ASR protocols, we'd have been an ASR2 team. And it wouldn't have mattered that we didn't have any kit.
Yeah.
We would have done what we would have done. We wouldn't have stopped and rescued anyone. So going back to this...
so the residential sector we're on now, part of the initial search, you threw the dogs over it this morning?
Yeah, dogs went over this morning, and I believe we had 3 live indications with the canine.
Okay.
2 of which was just literally moving some lightweight material, so didn't even get as far as being a work site. Casualty details form had been uploaded onto ICMS. Another live hit was a casualty under some rubble, basically some sort of 1.2 by 2 metre foot thick concrete slabs, which the team are currently working on.
So this is an entombed individual in this?
Yeah, entombed individual.
Do we know if it's 1 or 2? Have we used any search cams or anything like that?
We haven't used any search cams at the moment, and to be honest, my personal train of thought is I'm not that bothered. There could be 10 under there.
Okay.
We've got to achieve this task to get to the first one, and if there's more, that just makes it Christmas.
Roger that.
Obviously, from a command and control point of view, and feeding back into the Lima, they are going to want to know how many people are potentially under there. But at this precise time, with the limited kit we got, I can't give them an accurate sit rep of what is actually in there. We're hoping this is going to be relatively straightforward, just basically a slide drill, and then we're going to be able to move on to a further live dog hit, which was behind some hazardous warning signage for heavy metals. But we've had that been confirmed by the Lima that's old signage and not relevant to that site.
Roger that. Love it. Jim, thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Tristan Bowen.
Tristan, so you're in charge of what team are you in charge of?
Red 1.
Red 1.
Yeah.
So we're here as part of heavy rescue exercise. You're part of Red 1. What sector are we in at the minute?
We've been doing Sector Bravo initially. We finished that in good time. So then we were retasked to help the Alpha sector to complete their tasks.
So you're carrying out ASR 1s and 2s. What's the difference between an ASR for anyone that's unfamiliar? What's the idea of an ASR?
An ASR 1 is the first ASR in a series of 5 ASRs. It's a wide area scene assessment, so it's very quick. It's quite a toxic triage of what buildings have been affected. So if there's anything obvious, like a total collapse of a building compared to a building which is still standing, then priorities would be the one that's collapsed. So it's prioritizing buildings, identifying roads, identifying potential helicopter landing sites, any hazards. But this is done really quickly, and then once we've gathered all that information, then we move on to ASR to level 2s, where we start picking the bones out of any buildings that we think there may be victims included.
So is your ASR 1 anything to do with likelihood of victims, or because you have got some dogs with you today, they're working as part of the ASR 1s as well?
ASR 1s, if there are any quick wins, potentially there could be casualties that are trapped very lightly. We can get them out with a couple of crowbars. And the beauty of the dog is they can quickly cover area much quicker than us as humans and pick up any quick wins. So ASR 1s, but the problem with that is we don't want to be dragged in
Striking that
performing
balance, isn't
a
it?
3-4 hour casualty extrication where we got to look at the bigger picture, the greater good. There potentially could be 10 casualties further on that need our help. So it's a fine balance it's a moral balance between helping and getting the whole picture done quickly.
So I've seen you making markings on buildings and stuff like that. If you could just give us a whistle-stop down to dirty, what some of the markings are and what they sort of distinguish.
For example, for any type of site, it could be a street or a town, it's important to identify what are the different buildings. So any other team that come behind us, they know exactly where they're going. So each site, each area of interest has a marking. For example, we give it a number or a letter, for example, Alpha 1 or Bravo. And then whenever we pick up a work site in our ASR 2, we then can categorise that building in what type of search we need, how much time and resources it's going to require. So we we triage that building or what kind of help we need. But the markings is there is just to identify the building, so all other teams nationally and internationally, because we all do exactly the same marking system, they know exactly what the picture is.
Love it. So you're working on, what was this believed to be before this pile that we're on at the moment?
This was the embassy building.
Any known victims, any concerns of missing persons in there?
At the moment, there are no known victims. We have sent a dog over and they have indicated that they've detected people there. So at the moment, we've looked at all the access points, we've identified where we can breach into that building, and hopefully we can then find and rescue these people that might be trapped in there.
Love it. Tristan, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Today's episode is supported by our good friends over at Duty Crew Coffee. Now, as you're probably aware, coffee is the most popular drink worldwide, with over 2.25 billion cups of coffee consumed every single day, and over 70 million of those in the UK alone. Most of this is consumed in our crew rooms, our watch offices, and by our emergency services frontline staff. So when you're getting together around the mess table, don't be drinking no nasty ass cheap coffee. Nobody likes that guy that brings the cheap stuff. Life is too short to be drinking crap coffee. So if you head on over to dutycrew.co.uk or click the link in the podcast below, you'll be able to jump on over and see the Duty Crew coffee products. They come in 227 gram oversized high quality recyclable standard pouches, and they are individually wrapped 10 gram coffee bags. They're quick, mess free, convenient. They have a one-way degassing valve, which is an absolute must for storage of freshly roasted coffee. You can get the 20-pack response bag. They've got the HQ, they've got the No Duff, they've got the Unity, the Decaf, and of course all of their products are Rainforest Alliance certified, Fair Trade Foundation, and most importantly, they taste freaking epic. I started drinking Duty Crew about 2 months ago, and then when I fell in love with it, I got in contact with them and they came on board with the podcast. So jump on over to Duty Crew Coffee if you want some of the good stuff. Now back to the podcast.
That meter right up.
A meter? Oh, George, you're right. I'm Stacey Irvin from
Stacey
Kent.
from Kent. So Stacey, we're sort of halfway through day one as part of a heavy rescue exercise. You're acting team leader on this in this sort of scenario. What's the inject? What are the team working on here?
So what we've been working on, we've had loads of large slabs of concrete in the way of a entrance to a tunnel. We had a dog hit on the tunnel this morning.
Okay.
So there's a live casualty in there. At the moment they're unconscious.
You had any contact? Yeah, I haven't had any contact.
We had contact this morning, but now they're unconscious.
Yep.
They've been in there possibly up to 36 hours now, so we really need to get through into the void. So we've manually had to dig out some soil. We've moved some large slabs manually as well because we're really short on kit, so we was after turfers and stuff.
For people that are unfamiliar with when we just say moving large slabs, what's the sort of lifting and moving mechanisms that we've got in play, and what resource? Because you haven't got all your kit here.
We haven't got all the kit. We normally use a turfer winch, which really helps us move big slabs. We used one of them this morning to help move a 3-ton slab, so it got big potential. That was just dragging it along the floor. But yeah, today we've just been using pry bars, which are big, long metal bars, to get a mechanical advantage and lever it out the way to help us gain access, along with putting a big strop round it and 6 of us going heave-ho, pulling it out the way.
Teamwork at its best. I love it.
Yeah, so just very mandrolic movement
I love that statement.
of the slabs, because we're really short of kit out here right now.
So you've got a really strategic sort of way of working practice going on in terms of welfare and stuff.
Yeah,
Give some people some considerations on differences in what we're dealing with there.
So it's mega hot out here.
Yeah, I think it's like 27 today maybe.
Yeah, really hot, so really limited shade. So we've managed to bring out a bit of old salvage sheet, which we've made a little a tent.
Love it.
We're making sure, I'm trying to make sure that we've got at least 2 people resting under the tent with water at all times, so that we can really focus on crew rotation. And
how different is that balance from like when we're working in UK Fire and Rescue Service, where we're like probably going to get reliefs after whatever 4, 5, 6 hours, whereas out here, how do you strike that discipline between we need to get a bit of rest, but also there's people in there that need rescuing, time's ticking, there's not another team coming on, we're the only ones in country. How do you balance that?
Really hard. And like this morning I was doing the first sort of assessment. You're having to walk past casualties to try and assess the area. And it's hard to walk past and leave them. So
how does that balance? Because that's the ASR 1 versus ASR 2.
It's horrible.
How do you know when you're there for too long? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like snatch rescues are okay,
you
but
just know that you need a bit of kit, or you know that it's really hard.
Because you could easily get bogged down, can't you?
You can.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of times that the crews were like, no, I just want to grab a bit of scaffold bar and leave it
Yeah.
out the way. It's like, no.
Yeah.
we've
I just
got
need
to
5
move
more
on.
minutes. No, you can't have it.
Yeah,
We've got to move
we've
on.
got to move
Got to
on,
move
'cause
on.
You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know if there's going to be a school of kids that you can just walk out and save 30 lives rather than one that might not be savable. So it
the
is a
unknowns,
really
isn't it?
hard balance.
So they've kind of moved a load of topsoil and stuff now.
Yep.
What have they come across?
We've now got a metal grid that's in the way of another concrete slab. So we need to now cut through the metal grid, but unfortunately the hot gas cutting isn't working now,
No.
which is what we would have wanted. Our recip saws were really low on blades, so we're having
That
to...
surprised me because we were literally talking about that as a director staff because we got the newer, I don't want to name the company, but we had a newer style blade that we thought were going to be the absolute bee's knees.
We've been given two.
Yeah, well,
And we've got as you can see, a sheet of metal that's probably, 1.5 meters by 60.
yeah.
So we need to try and make a big enough entrance through that so that we can at least get a stretcher out or a casualty out.
Okay.
So we're limited on...
And then after that, we've got the block. What's the thoughts of the block? How are we going to manoeuvre that? How are we going to work
We're
our way
hopefully
through it?
going to breach our way through it.
Breach
so
it.
use-
Dirty breach?
Depends on the casualty. We're going to probably do a core hole, which is make a hole,
Okay.
get a camera through, see the position of the casualty, see what the atmosphere is like behind the slab.
What equipment have we got available for the tech search side of it, for the
We've
cameras?
I think we've got a search cam, and
I think
there's
there's
another,
two Search Cam 3000s, I
there's
think
two-
there is, yeah.
Yeah, I think one's a Search Cam 3000 that I'm used to, and another one that's sort of a random Search Cam. So that's all we've got. But
Okay.
we've also all got mobile phones, so even if we were to just put a torch through and see if we can use the camera and have a bit of a zoom, just sort of make
It's
it
a great
up as we
shout.
go along.
No,
really.
you say that, but that's kind of like the firefighter mentality, isn't it? It's that improvise, adapt and overcome.
So if like I say, we're having to manually move slabs, so we've got to try and use what we've got in our pockets, put in a glow stick, do whatever we can to try and get light through the other side. If the casualty is far enough away from where we're going to break through,
Yeah.
we can do a dirty breach,
Okay.
which will be quicker.
Yeah.
But if they're right up close to where we've got to break through, we'll have to do a clean breach, which is longer, and we've lodged more sort of holes and try and bring a triangle shape out forwards.
Without any eye bolts or anything here,
It's going to be tricky.
what's your thoughts on that one? Yeah, it's
Well,
going to be
we can
tough to
use,
do it.
There's bits of rebar laying around.
Okay.
And we've got a few bits of rope and stuff.
So as in trying to poke one through.
Poke one through, make a little bit of anchor and pull it back through on itself. So
Love it.
hopefully do something like that. But yeah, our next challenge is getting through the metal before we can start marking
Before the
up
blade
the-
runs out.
Hopefully,
We're
yeah.
getting
I think
there.
if not, we're going to, I don't know what.
I wanted to ask you a little thing about leadership as well, because obviously you're taking charge of this.
Yeah, I'm really new to it all as well.
No,
so
team
I'm
seems to be
learning
responding really, really well. But obviously, you've worked with a lot of probably good and bad managers and leaders
yeah.
over
you
your
learn,
time.
You learn from both, actually.
You do learn from both. So, with that in mind, what are some of the things you try and replicate? What are some of the things you see in the best leaders you've worked for?
Jim is one of the best people I've ever worked for, so I try and be more like Jim.
Be more like Jim. What would Jim
be like
do?
Jim. What
Okay,
would
be
Jim
like
do
Jim.
in a situation?
But you also got to pivot that on your own personality, because
You
you're a
have.
much nicer person than Jim.
No, I don't
You're
think
quite
I am.
bubbly.
He is.
Jim's old. You know, it's different approach to
I've got slightly
life.
more hair than Jim.
Yeah. So
Apart from that, we're the same person.
how do you make that work with the team? What's your sort of approaches around
Like I say, I'm very bubbly.
Okay.
I want to be more charismatic, more crew welfare, rotation, listen to everyone's ideas. Everyone's got so much experience here.
Yeah.
Like, especially in this team, we've got one guy that's only just done his UKISAR 1, but he used to be a crane operator, so
He's a good
rigging
egg.
and slinging and stuff, it's his bag.
Yeah.
We've got a structural engineer who's not UKISAR. It's trying to listen to everyone and their experiences and try and bring it all together. So I'm definitely not very good at everything, but hopefully I'm the people person that can try and
That's the
listen
biggest
to
one. Honestly, with the
everything.
great leaders, I always find that some of them think, some not so great leaders think they need to know the thing.
Yeah.
Like they need to be the expert.
I'm not the expert.
You don't need to be the expert. You know what I mean? You need to navigate the
Yeah.
experts, and that's it, and acknowledge
Yeah.
people and get that rotation in. I
But-
think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, it's very kind. But it's hard to learn because obviously I'm very hands-on and want to get in there.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
first drill, I was a bit blinkered and wanted to get hands-on,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I need
yeah.
to be more mindful of
They always say one of the
other
small
things.
tips is take your gloves off.
If you're a leader, if you take your gloves off, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get
I'll do
involved.
that in a minute. Thank you.
But
Tip
striking
of
that
the day.
balance.
Take your gloves off.
Look, great stuff. Make sure you get some
you.
water on. I'll speak to you later.
Cheers.
Paul Evans, welcome back, brother. How you doing?
How you going, Pete? Good to speak to you again.
All the better to see your smiling face, mate. You're looking fitter and healthier as well. Your knee's working again. You're a good man.
Oh yeah. Last time we were in Kosovo, it was aching a bit.
Hey, what, you had some graft there, mate. You did a lot of miles those days. So what are we looking at the minute? You are part of Red Team 1. Red Team 1. How's this part of the incident going? We're now on the embassy. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so if you can imagine an embassy, it's quite obviously a big structure, and we've got a complete collapse with several voids across the whole structure.
Okay.
So first of all, we've gone across on a quick scan, identifying the voids where we could get in, and then
Were there any quick wins on the ASR one? Did you manage to find any? Or
no,
okay,
not at all. We run the dogs over. The dog indicated life, and then it's just a case now of handballing the equipment across and cutting through the concrete to get to the voids what we need to get to now.
So obviously you're part of the command and control team as well. What's that been like since you're in country? Because you haven't got your normal cash, you haven't got your normal kit. It's been a real, you had to leverage a lot of your skills and improvisation, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because obviously normally on a normal deployment, weight issues and transport issues isn't a problem. Obviously for training it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had to come with limited stuff, really try and guess what we need and try and preempt it. And because we're quite short on our staff anyway, we wait for the others to come into country on Tuesday. So so there's only 3 of us trying to run a complete heavy teams command.
And you usually have 7, you're saying?
Yeah, it's usually a team, a minimum of 7 really. So
what
yeah,
what have you had to been, sort of, it sounds harsh, what have you had to accept that you can't do? What's the sort of, how have you managed to maintain comms? What's the sort of pace system been and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so obviously the important one is obviously the pay system. So we've made sure we had sat phones, we got mobile phones, we got alarms. So we brought them as a matter of course, just more for a.
Did you have to use your own phones and convert them over to the networks, or did you still have some in the?
Yeah,
was there still some that got bought in the baggage? Or?
Yeah, so we brought a phone each, we brought a laptop each, we brought a tablet. But obviously we have to give some of them away to other functions within the group, like safety and security and things like that. So yeah, we've been sort of trying to pass the laptops around, pass the equipment around what we need, and just try and be a bit more tight with the equipment, if you know what I mean. And then,
which is good, because we are quite spoilt, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
We've got 7 versions that you seem to have equipment hanging off you sometimes, 3 bags full of technology and all that sort of jazz. DeLorme's performing all right. What was it? Because you've had a couple of teams go off site as well.
Yeah, so the DeLorme's quite good. It dummies up as a GPS as well, but also from the command tent. When we got Wi-Fi and internet, we can actually track our team if we've lost the comms, and that's our emergency backup.
Is that the breadcrumb system we think about?
So we can do a breadcrumb system. We can also send them a message via text, and then they'll pick it up. So it's quite a good bit of kit, that is, really.
What's the environmental factors here? Because obviously we're about 27, 28 degrees. How's the welfare going for everybody?
It's good. I'm quite impressed with how the team leaders really managing it, and even the command's also reminding me as well to mention it to the team leader. So between the 3 of us, it's been managed. It's been managed quite good. It affects people in different ways, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely. Love it, mate. I'll let you crack on.
No, thank you.
A quick reminder for all of our listeners of our monthly giveaway. Now, as part of our partnership with HAIX, Rosenbauer and Tallyman, we give away that little bit extra to our podcast listeners every single month. You can get 2 personalised BA tallies. These are hardware and they've got your own name on them, they've got your own service number on them, and they have the podcast logo on the back. And then for the juicy stuff, HAIX give away a pair of their incredible footwear. And some of the stuff is pretty expensive stuff, to be honest with you. We try and switch it and change it every month. We are guided by the gods of HAIX to make sure we are giving you exactly what you need for that time of year. So it might be boots, it might be trainers, and then once every quarter our good friends over at Rosenbauer are giving away their Boris B5 Firefighter boots as well. So to be in with a chance to win, jump over to our social media platforms or YouTube, where you need to tag a member of the emergency services in the post, be following our page, and you will be in with a chance to win at the end of every single month. Back to the show.
Mark Smith?
So, Mark, you're here supporting sort of ISAR work. How does this compare to the sort of everyday stuff that you're doing? Because you're involved with some colossal projects around the world, to be fair.
It's fair to say that the day job is very, very different to the job we have to perform out here. But part of my role in terms of the day job is I predominantly do health and safety within a very demanding and specialist construction environment, which includes specialist demolition and site enablement packages. And some of the similarities between those packages and some of the similarities between the building conditions are not dissimilar to those that have been affected by a natural disaster such as an earthquake as we're dealing here.
A lot of the buildings that we come across in some of these countries, though, and it's not necessarily typical of it, but they tend to happen in areas of sometimes lower socioeconomic level. So you sometimes do you find you see that in the building materials that are in use? I mean, structures like what we're in front of today, in terms of types of concrete, general build types, how much has that shifted over that sort of 50-year period from some of the buildings you see?
That's a good question. It's fair to say that some of the archetypal buildings we see from what was the former Soviet bloc from the 50s and 60s are of an archetype.
Okay.
They were essentially built from a catalogue, is my understanding of it. Your government chose the product from the catalogue.
Yeah.
That was approved. The building materials were approved from approved sources. And as a result of that, there's a great deal of uniformity across what was the former Soviet Union, USSR. You're quite right in what you're saying, though, is that the actual building techniques, though, are not what we have come to expect in the United Kingdom, that's for sure. The building regulations and the sign-off for buildings are very, very different overseas as we typically find in the UK. As a result of that, there needs to be a sort of heightened awareness about that, particularly around sort of structural steel elements where perhaps welding isn't perhaps the same codes or standards we're used to in the UK, and therefore we can't really rely on use the same parameters of strength and tensile strength and stability that we would normally apply in those cases.
I mean, a simple example, similar, is like when we came across, entering into this site, we came across a very old bridge, and there was some conversation around some unknowns about the width of it, the span that it was trying to do, the construction of it. Give us a whistle-stop tour of what we're looking at there. The
bridge itself is actually a recognised military-type bridge, which is very, very robust, very, very strong, and designed for very robust and demanding environments. However, it has to be built and erected and used within certain parameters. And on the site today, we've used that bridge itself has probably been overspanned somewhat. As a result of that, there's a certain amount of sag in the middle of the bridge that at some point will need to be rectified in advance of further aid and support convoys coming into the affected area.
Then when we're looking at heat and stuff like that, because obviously sometimes it's a big call for incident commanders and people to be shouting for a structural engineer on their site. I think people should feel more open to shouting for one. But what are some of the easy wins that people can be thinking about when we think about spalling and temperatures and steel and things like that? What should we be looking out for when we're unsure about a building?
It's a very, very simple rules of thumb, and that rules of thumb, if it doesn't look right, chances are it isn't right. If a building appears to be leaning, there's no better than the Mark 1 eyeball. So you do stand off the building, keep eyes on, is it still moving? Is it out of plumb? Do the windows look straight? Do the doors open and close easily? If they don't, that's a sure sign that the building somewhere has suffered some sort of failure or is on the move. They spall into concrete with exposed rebar. The structural steel elements, welds could have cracked on things like, external fire escape stairs, are very easily identifiable from outside the building without putting anybody at risk. You can see that from outside the building. And they give a very, very early and good indication that there may be further problems that you probably need to investigate a bit more thoroughly.
In terms of things like structural monitoring, in the past I recognise we've used WASPs and we've used certain visual indicators as well to notice whether or not a building's shifting. Do we still use that stuff? I'm sure there's advances in technology all the time.
Back in the UK, UK construction has moved on leaps and bounds. We have passive and active full-time building monitoring systems that can manage to within a millionth of a degree movement up, down, sideways, any way you like.
Because where you work, and we don't necessarily have to say, but the majority of your work is done in a heavily built-up city environment where construction may be happening around it at all levels. With land so hard to come by, people are now digging down as well as going up. So that brings in a whole other complexity that perhaps we won't see in places like this.
You're absolutely right. Again, in terms of the UK market, the monitoring requirements there are very, very stringent, and for good reason. And the environments we work in central London are very demanding for exactly the reason you've described. Where we are today, those demands are less. And in an emergency situation, in an environment where we have been mobilised, the need for structure monitoring to that degree just wouldn't be necessary, and probably would actually prevent the UKISAR teams and the ISAR teams from doing what they do best, which is rescue people. What they think is to be aware. Just be aware of what your surroundings. use the all quiets for different reasons. When you call in an all quiet, you're listening for casualties, listen to the building, listen to the structure. What's that doing? Because that will tell its own story.
Yeah.
And if it's still creaking, it's still groaning, then it isn't happy. And if it isn't happy, you might want to take a step back from it.
I always remember from our old fire engineering manuals, that was the big thing with wood. It'll always give you a bit of a warning. It always groans at you, whereas steel, they tend to go for that sudden pop and go. Would we be right in saying that? Would you still see that sort of thing?
Yeah, you do, but you have to, again, the temperature we're talking about to get there is above 1,000 degrees centigrade. And it's to get any sort of deformation in steel, and steel at that heat just tend to deform rather than break.
Okay.
It's unlikely what will cause failures at joints between bolted flanges or welded joints rather than across the span of a beam. So that will bend and deform rather than snap. Whereas bolts, high tensile steel bolts, will snap and do snap.
Yeah. Without wanting to point the finger at any certain services, because that's not the sort of thing we do on the podcast, but with UK Fire, I love ISAR most because it brings sometimes more of a practical mindset to solutions, whereas sometimes, and I know you advise on a lot of UK emergency services and incidents, what are some of your biggest frustrations? If you had to give an emergency services incident commander a bit of advice of how best to work with a structural engineer, if you're going to call a structural engineer to the incident, how best to work with them? Because sometimes you give advice and they push back on it. What's the best way for us to sort of work together?
I think from my perspective, and speaking on behalf of incident commanders, which I've never been and never could be, I think you need to be very clear on what you're asking.
Okay.
And what information you're asking for, because if you're asking very, very specific questions about a specific element of a structure, that's the advice you'll be given.
Mm.
If the advice or support you're requesting or the guidance you're requesting is a bit more generic, well, be generic.
Yeah.
And try not to be too targeted and specific, and try to understand before you ask the question what you're actually hoping to get out of the answer.
It needs to start from trust, I suppose, doesn't it? Understand that person is the specialist advice. At the end of the day, you're not going to understand everything that they're talking about, but if they're there for a reason.
The other thing very, very important to remember, we're not the decision makers. The incident commander owns the incident ground. That's his incident. Any specialist advice, be it structural, be it in hazardous environments, be it hazardous substances, are there to advise and to add a voice to the incident command room, and another voice and another opinion, another way of looking at things. Now they all get collected together, and the decision is then made based on the collective decision rather than the incident commander's decision, which is my experience that, particularly working with LFB very closely and other elements of the police and DVI, they very much look for a holistic and collaborative approach to decision making rather than an arbitrary we are going to do.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 that approach really doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. No. How have you found it sort of getting your hands on the tools? Because within your organisation you do a lot of strategic, tactical, leadership level stuff, whereas here you've actually been able to get older stuff and you've been putting in some shifts.
I'm very pleased to say that if anybody's filmed it, I need to have a copy because I'll never ever believe it. Unless you film on camera, it'll never be believed.
I think everybody was getting out your way when you're holding that sledge, mate. I thought you were going to go straight through it. I appreciate some of the concrete's a little bit softer than some of the older stuff you used to, but yeah, you've been putting it in, brother. It's good.
Yeah, that's good. Cheers, buddy.
Hey, man. Paul Corney, how you doing, brother?
Hey Pete, how are you?
I'm awesome, my man. So we're about a day and a bit through, I suppose about 1 day through the heavy rescue. We've got the teams here taking on probably their first aspect of rope access, rope rescue, technical rope. How have they found their way to this position? Because they've done all sorts of hot cutting and stuff. What they've been working on today?
Yeah, so the structure they're on is a 3-tiered shipping container sort of industrial unit, if you like. And they had to breach through hot cutting or metal disc cutting through the container from one to another to give them access to support the floor that they were going to walk on, which is the roof of the container, from inside, before they could actually access the roof of the container to walk across, because it was marked as fragile, and the information that they gathered, and also I believe, from just looking at it itself, when you looked at some of it, it looked a bit risky for them to snatch rescue,
aged, isn't it? Yeah.
because the actual casualty was so far away from their route. And that's a consideration. If it was a short distance, potentially they could have snatch rescued, but because it was quite prolonged and at the highest point of the structure, to get everybody up there required meant crossing that risky area. So they've done a lace post shore inside.
What's the different levels of shore? Because I know you're a bit of a shore and expert with this sort of stuff. Why have we chosen that selection versus whatever 2-post verticals or whatever?
So a lace post shore is the strongest shore you make.
Okay.
So 4-post in standard form in the UK, that would be a 10-ton capable shore. We're only going to pass a team over it, but if the European standard, each person is 100 kilos to do the maths to make it easy. So if we put 8 people up there and the casualty,
Carrying
that's
see, yeah.
nearly a ton of weight we've added to the decking, 900 kilos, plus the equipment used to recover the casualty.
Mm-hmm.
So they've all made their way up there, knowing that the floor is fully supported by a shore that could potentially support 10 tonnes, 2.5 tonnes per post, and there's 4 posts within that shore. But because we're overseas, the timber isn't rated. The gussets were slightly thinner material. It brings down the capability of shore. So if you imagine it was
You and one of the other directing staff, sorry to interrupt, you were in charge of sourcing some of the wood over here.
Yes.
That was quite a colossal challenge in itself, wasn't it? But it's similar to what people would have to face, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much. And when you speak to some of the guys that went to Japan, the most common bit of kit used was either a length of timber,
Yeah.
or a shovel or a nail bar or something like that. We're talking levering.
Yeah.
So they're using the timber as a long lever, or they're using the pry bar or the shovel as another form of lever. So and they source most of that timber through the debris that was around them. And we would probably do the same thing, really, because we're not going to have a timber merchants to nip to.
No.
And
This is
so-
probably the first time I've seen the team have to work without the cash, which is an important fact. I mean, you've got, certainly more so than myself, you've probably got one of the best familiarities with the kit we would usually work with.
Yes.
We've got some great stuff provided too for us here, but there are lots of variations. Some people more familiar, a lot of people less familiar, and lots of things missing that they wouldn't usually have, really.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, you could say a drill's a drill.
Yeah.
But most of our stuff, drill-wise, is SDS and SDS Max, and that's the method it's connected to, the bit's connected to the tool. Some of the drills here are actually a clamping chuck,
Okay.
which in a way used to be the method that we would use, but now, if you could, most common clamping chuck people would use would be like on a cordless drill driver.
Sort of thing I used to pull out my old man's garage. To be honest with you. They all
but
had a chuck key.
They've got with the chuck key, and they've moved on from a chuck key where it's just a clamping chuck that you hand tighten. But for some of the tooling that we would have in our cache, it wouldn't be suitable. And you'd need a smooth chisel or smooth drill bit, at the end so that it could clamp onto it. But with the SDS bits that we have, they've got lots of pockets and grooves in, and the clamping might be an issue. So all of our kit is SDS. They've got some clamping bits here, but they've also got a lot of other bits that we wouldn't have. They've got a set of bits with them, be it steel, wood, timber, flat bits, all that kind of stuff. We don't carry a majority of that. We carry maybe an auger bit for coring in timber.
When the team were cutting through the containers, that was sort of an interesting dynamic for me, trying to see when does it become, because we didn't class this as, did we class this bit as confined space? Did we have a system in place for this? I wasn't present when that was happening. When does that balance tip? Because we did have some air monitoring, we did have a little bit of sort of induction of air going on. What was the dynamic there?
So any space can be a confined space if you introduce a hazard.
Okay.
Yeah, so the hazard that they had there was that they needed to cut the metal, and whichever method they used, be it a recip saw, be it a metal cutting disc, or be it hot cutting. Hot cutting wouldn't work because we request a cylinder on our transit in, on our pre-request deployment forms, and the valve grouping is slightly different. And because the valve grouping is slightly different, we can maybe not connect ours to it. Ours is a DIN fitting.
Okay.
They don't quite have that. They have a different fitting where we might need a female receiver. They've got a male.
When you're working with pressurised gas, it's not something you can really...
No. And you need to have correct
just
fittings.
ad hoc try and couple together.
A bit of PTFE tape and clamp
It's not
really
quite
tight.
going to be good enough.
No. So, you can adapt some of the kit. They had oxyacetylene here, but unfortunately the regulator for that gives a very different pressure than what we need for hot cut. When we demand oxygen, we need it up to 60 psi.
Yeah.
They don't have that, where acetylene is very controlled and a lot less pressure. So even by adapting, maybe taking off their oxygen hose and putting our oxygen hose on it, the actual regulator wouldn't allow us to get the pressure up enough.
An interesting thing for me was the heat in here as well, because they did a lot of work with the metal cutting disc, and they did a lot of recip work. They're inside 3 layers of I think there's probably 8 deep or so 8 collection of containers down here. It's red hot in there. As soon as I got through that first compartment, there was a real welfare aspect that needed to be factored in as well. Because shoring in there looked quite arduous.
Yeah, Jim was really good at managing the time, and if you get the chance to have a look, they did a really big hole initially through the back of a container, which is obviously just the wavy metal.
Yeah.
But then they had the doors to attend with them,
Straight to the door, didn't they?
which is a lot thicker. You know,
Yeah.
the actual bars are an inch thick.
Yeah.
It's box section steel all around the doors, you know, because they are the strongest part of the container.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people will peel them open very easily. So for security reasons, they're multi-locking.
Yep.
So they've cut a smaller hole in that, you know, sticking to the narrowest part of the steels to cut, which is, you know, that's just being smart, isn't it? Why cut the big stuff if we can get through the small
All of
stuff?
that, as arduous as it looks as well, is not simply, but to create that safe platform.
Yes.
So this is quite a big piece of work,
Yes.
just for the teams to safely make access,
Yes.
to commit to the rescue where they are now. I mean, they're 3 floors up nearly.
But we're really good at avoiding, controlling, managing the hazard, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we cannot get up onto that roof without passing that dangerous area. So controlling that hazard, yeah, we could have, you know, maybe considered sheeting the top of it over the span. But if it's not going all the way to the other side of that container with the box section metal frame around the top, then they're still putting the board an extra weight on what's already considerably damaged roof. So by shoring it up from underside, they can put whatever they like on it now and cross that span many times. And the benefit is that while they were doing that inside there, and like you said, it was very hot, and they had a crew build the shores out here and pass them in,
Yeah.
because the space wasn't big enough to put the whole shore in or parts of the shore in together, already built. They had a fan pushing air into that space the whole time. You know, like you say, confined space. Well, if we can keep the air moving in there, there's no build-up or anything like that, and it's better for us as operators with that cold air blowing on us
100%.
than it is just getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
So as we look at it now, it's progressed more into a working rope job. So
Yeah.
there's some, obviously people can't see what we're doing here, there's some collective protection in place, but what sort of way of working or what level of rope work do you see this taking, and what do the rope operators need to be considering for it?
So they've got a casualty up there that has spinal injuries, unconscious and breathing, and they are going to raise and lower from one deck to another.
Okay.
And then raise and lower from the second deck to the ground over at that end, rather than try and incorporate something else around the area.
I was going to say
The-
there is some considerations that
a
maybe could be a
cableway
cableway
an
or something
anchor,
like that.
other
Yeah.
anchors, or using the vehicles you see over there as
Yeah.
anchors. It was more about the most direct, get them down, walk them across, get them down, walk them across. So they're going to lower them over each of those, through passing the line through the collective protection. Everyone else is protected by that collective protection, and then move them, carry the casualty across that, because as you can see, that's 40 foot, two shipping containers end to end, move across to the next collective protection point, when then you're probably using the same system they've already installed, because the rope is long enough
Yep.
to then carry on lowering them to the ground,
So
and then off to the casualty assessment area.
looking at what we've got in on the rest of the day, we've seen some teams working up on the embassy, we've seen them working on the rubble pile. What's some of the best sort of things that have surprised you today, or anything you've been particularly impressed with?
Just some of the little things, actually. You know, you look at the rubble pile and gaining access to the rubble pile, and often people get very, you know, a single path in and out.
Yeah.
And actually, the first team that went all the way to the railway station
Yeah.
stuck to the grass area to the right of the rubble pile, within the boundary of the incident, and walked all the way across the grass, passing all the rubble and all the other hazards associated
Slip,
with that.
trips and falls, rubble piles can be very unforgiving at times.
Yeah, all the way to the lighting mast that you can see that marked the corner of Sector B,
Yeah.
and carried on working from there. So that's where they set themselves up to start with. But that safe passage through, keeping the crews away from the rubble pile, and also the opportunity of getting drawn into something else, they went straight to their tasking.
So one of the things that I've enjoyed today, you know, when you see the bridge, for example, they've had to create ramps in and out. Something that I never recall particularly being trained to do. It's one of those where you've got cutting capabilities, you're familiar with your equipment, but it does require a lot of improvisation. I mean, did you ever, you've done loads of these sorts of courses, did they actually cover anything like that, or is that something that is you would expect people just to improvise on?
Yeah, you know, everyone will tell you firefighters are really good at coming up with solutions to problems, and whether it be, you know, fighting a fire somewhere and limited access, or creating, like you say, a wooden ramp at the end of a bridge.
Yeah. Not just for us to walk down as well. You know, we've had cars move up and down these today, and this is designed to create a safe access. Should we now require to, you know, take anybody by land ambulance or something like that?
Yeah, and the fact that they've shored underneath it as well, because over that span you can see that bridge has a sag on it.
Yeah.
But what the, you know, get that task done. But if you build it so that you could pass that many times, multiple times, you could leave it in a legacy state where we leave the country, go back to the UK, and that's still the main access for this town in and out, using the same bridge that we built for our purposes.
Likely would be,
but we
wouldn't it?
built it to the standard where it could stay there for the next however long they need it, or potentially years later. You often see things where they'll add another bit on it, add another bit on it when they get more and more materials. If we're struggling for materials, it'd be the bare bones to allow us to get it off. But if we've got a wealth of materials, you'll see we'll build a platform there that looks like it'll be part of the bridge forever. And that's important because it's not about us, it's about after the rubble as well.
That's a big factor, isn't it?
The time when we leave, what state we leave it in.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee that any time we leave, we're leaving it in a better condition than it was.
So looking over the next sort of 24 hours, obviously people won't hear this until it goes out, but what are the things you're looking forward to seeing people tackle? We've got a couple of sites that they've not yet interacted with. Yeah.
So there's a couple of tricky lifting and moving scenarios out there on the Rubble Pile. Also the fact that the crews have been flat out all day today, and then we're going to incorporate or extend the incident where it's going to be 24-hour working. So at some point, some of the teams need to start considering a rest period so that the other teams that are working can then hand over and get some rest.
When you've been to part of deployments and stuff like that, how have you managed that desire to constantly want to go, and you can see there's a need, you can see people need your support, need your skill sets, need your help. How do you sort of have that self-awareness to stop yourself and not just set yourself on fire to keep everybody else warm? You know what I mean? Give, and then you end up putting yourself in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
You have to, because you're there for the long game. Our deployments can be anywhere from 10 to 14 days. Self-sufficient in country, so you don't have many luxuries. And sustaining that work, ethic that you have, you need to control your enthusiasm with regards to trying to get everything done in the first couple of days.
Yeah.
And that's just down to personal discipline, team leader discipline, overall discipline, and overall welfare considerations, because we can't do it flat out all the time. You've got to work smart to work longer.
Love it.
Than work hard and work very short periods. And by working smarter, you're more productive. And you'll feel better about what you do, rather than end up so physically exhausted that you can't do another day's work, or you can't put the effort in that you did the day before, because you've worked so hard and really burnt yourself out. And we don't need to do that, because we need to be here for the duration of the incident, the duration of the deployment, and be effective and productive throughout that time, rather than being really productive and effective for a short period of time at the start, and then not very productive for the rest.
Having that burnout.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Paul.
No worries.
Russ, you're trying some new stuff with the Boo this time. Obviously, we're doing the consultation for the next part of the ISAR. We're looking at getting some new equipment. We're looking at reinvesting in the cash. What's your thoughts on the DLX tents?
Yeah, so DLX tents have been historic for us for the last 6-7 years with UKISAR. Tried and tested, we've utilised them quite a lot. Certainly for the event here, DLX team have come, they've supplied some tents for us to have a look at. It's the next era of DLX tents, really interesting. But certainly looking at the developments of what they bought, fantastic. It's certainly something looking forward to for the future.
For me, it's just the speed of it, especially for a deployment training like this. You've got people out on the pile. There's a lot of pressure on the base of operations to get set up really quickly. You're putting pressure on them. Local government's putting pressure on them. They want them on the pile. They want them search and rescue. They want them getting involved as quick as possible. So the speed at which this can go up allows you to get your command structure in place and allows those sort of building blocks to begin straight off the bat, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think you saw when the tents went up when they came, how quick DLX tents do go up.
Yeah.
And certainly that's why we've had them for the last 7 years, is because it supports the base of operations. What we want is something that's light, easy to travel, doesn't affect the cash, certainly because we have to use chartered planes if you're not using military planes.
Yeah.
So it has to be liftable, movable when we get to the other end, when we get here in Kosovo in country. Certainly for the scenario, you can see how remote the location is for the tents. Obviously we need to be quick, robust, get those up so we can get on the Rubble Pile, and that's tried and tested for us. That's why we're looking at reutilising DLX tents as we move forward.
Yeah, my name is Javier Iturbide, and I am the Europe Sales Director for DLX.
Love it. Thanks for coming over and spending some time with UKISAR. Incredible setup. I liked Russ was saying, we've had some of the older stuff for like 6 or 7 years now. But from the look to the shape, but most importantly, we haven't lost those assets of how quickly these things can be gotten to work. I mean, we're looking inside there, the command team getting to work in there.
Why have you continued to keep like going down the rabbit hole of development and keep trying to, improve on those older models, I suppose?
Well, we never see our product as a finished product.
Okay.
The only way to get our customers what they need is to actually go out there every time and be with them and see them work and get their feedback, because we see our items as a piece of technology, not a piece of material. Yeah. Everything is improvable, and we're constantly looking at the small things to improve to make the experience a better one, a lighter one, a faster one, a safer one for everyone.
Yeah. I always find it's quite a difficult mindset to live in, that aspect of marginal gains, because I live there 100% yourself, but it's almost like an aspect of self-torture where even though you've had years and years looking at these these structures, you can still see every time you see an iteration, every time you see a new environment, you see those small developments. So in this past sort of 2 or 3 years, what are some of the small things that you've seen or sort of that give you the greatest pride when you look at these new models that were here?
Well, what the greatest pride comes when a past customer that has one of our earliest products buys from us again.
Yeah,
that's the first. And the second one is how we solved the issue that was present in the past product. So UKMT, they were one of our first international customers.
Oh, really?
We are very grateful with them because it was a start in Europe for us. And the models they have and the models that we have now, and they're about to acquire, they will acquire in the future, are similar but very different in a way, because most of these modifications come from actually them using it and providing us their feedback. So we love to go out there and to see them work and just simply put them up and hang their stuff here and having a chill.
I was about to say, hanging stuff in them, I was quite surprised at how strong some of these structures are.
Yeah.
I always think, like, when something's easy to pop up, sometimes we have that word association game where we think fragility, we think it's going to break, but as with the firefighters, we've got big, bulky sacks on our back, and we start hanging. Anywhere there's an ability to hang something, we're going to hang it, but these are standing up under the weight. People have got their kit bags in there, they've got the helmets, they've got the boots. The strength of these is quite surprising.
Yes, well,
we have a habit for bending poles.
yeah, and it can happen, but instead of saying, don't hang anything because it's a fragile item, it's a piece of technology,
they're going to do it.
They're going to do it anyway. So we research into that, and then we can recommend, well, if you're going to hang it anyway, then this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And then for the next iteration of a product, we'll probably go out there, go with the engineers, go back to the desk and say, how can we make this a little bit stronger without sacrificing lightness, speed? And this is what the game is all about.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So for anybody that wants to learn a little bit more about DLX, where's the best place to find you?
deployedlogics.com. That's our website. We are Instagram, Facebook. I am the Europe Sales Director. So if you search into Sales Ambassadors, you'll find my name, you'll find my contact, LinkedIn, phone number, email, anything you need. Just one phone call message away. And I lead the operations in this part of the world and the Middle East. So anything you need, I'm there.
Love it. And you're also doing some work with the Kosovan team here. So the search and rescue team here, they've got people from Italy here this week. I think they've got a French, no, who's the other team they've got? They've got a French team here. I think they've got Norwegians. We brought some of our accreditors over, some of our mentors over with us as well. So this is a facility that's really going to get a great bit of exposure in terms of testing it, really testing the kit, really seeing all those international teams put it through its paces, I suppose.
For us, we'd love to help, because what we really want is the teams out there risking their lives, having the best equipment they can, and spending the less amount of energy and time in setting a camp up, and instead going out there and do their job. So having teams from all over the world with different needs and different views of their work is always great, because we can't provide everything for everyone, but we can improve what we have every time, and that's our aim.
Love it. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Sarah Mimner.
Lee Jennings.
Finishing up on our heavy exercise in Kosovo. We had some interesting challenges with logistics this time, because obviously we didn't have all of our kit. How on earth, as the LFB lot are managing logistics, do you get your head around that and sort of box it all off?
So first things first, we had to get the teams actually to go out and locate the kit. So whilst everyone was getting their functions set up, we were actually still waiting for them to find something that we could use. And then from that, we had to build a cache, we had to build the manifests, we had to create systems so that it could be deployed out to the teams. So we went from very, very slow start to manic 24 hours, and then, things started to settle.
Test everything, run through gear that we might not know or have in our cache.
Yeah.
We also had to do a tool fam with the rest of the teams because there's some stuff that no one had. Just make sure everyone knows that it was working. Show them how to change.
How'd you go about
bits.
doing that? Because it sounds obvious, but what I mean is, like, we assume, and this is the worst thing, we assume that, everyone knows what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But there was certainly kit there I hadn't seen before. I mean, just different it was a pretty good cache, to be fair.
Cache. Yeah, it was good cache. And most of it, I would say 80% of it was similar to our stuff.
Okay.
So worked in most of the same ways. We just made sure it worked and checked the functions on it. The stuff we hadn't seen before, we just got it up, set it up between us, played with it, made sure it worked. And then once we realised how it worked, we just did the same to everyone else, and then got everyone involved to have a go at themselves, changing bits.
So what was the kit you actually had to start with? Because you did get one or two bits before the whole thing kicked off. Because there was the car and the bridge and the trees and stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think someone had found a turf wall and some strops, hadn't they, behind one of the buildings.
Okay.
So that they could move a tree off of the bridge to make access across to the other side. But that was found by groups doing a hasty search of the area when it came back with that equipment.
How do you go about managing personal discipline with people when it comes to logs? Because for me personally, when I'm looking at people take stuff, if we looked at this like a micro case study in like an RTC, it's like when people place stuff outside of the coordinate, it just sort of hangs around there, and then someone's like, "Have you finished that? You're not finished with that." You need to know where it is, otherwise other people can't use it.
Yeah, so that's where that initial 24 hours of manicness came from, because that's where we created an inventory. So we had a check-in and out system, but a lot of it is personal discipline and having that conversation with people saying, I've got a list of things I want. Well, you're working in a foreign country with new tools, with less stuff.
Yeah.
Do you need this? So for us, it's quite hard, and sometimes we have to say no. Sometimes we've got to say that's not available.
Mm-hmm.
We're also considering that we may not have fuel.
Yeah.
So you can't just keep the generator running like we normally do back at home on a UKISAR exercise, because that fuel is not just for us; it's for the boo, it's for our hot water so we can eat. So it's being really, really sensible and just having a lot of forward vision as to what's going to happen. I think pre-planning saved us a lot of the time on this.
Trying to build quite quickly a good working relationship with those teams, so that they understand that. Because in UKISAR we do rescue, so we understand how important it is to have that equipment as quick as possible. So in our minds, that's exactly what we're trying to do, but it doesn't come across like that sometimes, obviously, because we've got other stuff to sort out. But once you build that relationship with those teams, they understand that is exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Trying to get that kit to them as quick as they can, and they understand there might be a little bit of a delay in that. But hopefully we got that across.
I was speaking with Sarah about how important it probably is to have logs as part of every single sort of planning meeting. When there's a new site recognised, when they've done their ASRs and stuff like that, having logs should be part of every sort of conversation, and that's something we don't necessarily do all the time, but it's something perhaps we need to move towards.
I think that's definitely one of my biggest take-homes from this whole exercise is our communication system as a team. So not just having logs there, but having the boo there.
Yeah.
Having command and control there, having the ops commanders, so we know what's happening, so we can start to plan, because it gives us an extra half an hour to just, because we're actually pre-planning what equipment's about to go out, and then we can see what's working, what's coming across the work site, so we can just say, do you know what, there's actually another line-up that's about to happen, you can have this gear to begin with, because we need to save this for this team. So it's being part of those meetings. We also then get a vision of the work site. It makes it quicker, but we also know what the team leader's plan is going forward. So
I've had several bits of really good feedback for yourself, Sarah, because this is the first time you took on the team leader role for the logs. How did you find it?
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
I don't think it will ever be like this, where I've got no cash at all.
I know.
So first deployment on an exercise, landing in as team leader. But to be fair, the boys that we've got from London, we're just autonomous. We didn't even have to manage them. The hardest bit for us was actually the admin.
Yeah.
That was the main role that we've had to sort out, is just admin. Like, unfortunately, I spent a lot of time in a shipping container.
I saw you.
writing lists, but it made the whole process a lot easier. So when we finished, we had everything. We had everything there. We knew what was coming in and out. I never thought I would come away with ISAR and sit in a container and write lists, but it's an experience. How have you found it?
So, Lee, how did we manage the welfare side of stuff? Because it was pretty hot. How's this been in comparison to sort of stuff you've done before, exercise you've done before? We probably hovered around 27, 28 degrees for most of the time we were there. Tough from a welfare perspective.
Yeah, it was. It's not, I haven't worked in a UKISAR environment for that long in that sort of temperature.
Yeah.
Having a smaller team, it was a little bit easier to manage our own welfare. We made sure we had plenty of water, stayed in the shade where we could.
Yeah.
Rotated when we could. Obviously, we did end up doing long hours because we're having a smaller team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, everyone was pretty good with their welfare, weren't they? Do you know what I mean? Taking on, we've got a couple of ex-military in our team, so they're well ahead on that sort of stuff as well. They advise everyone else.
Yeah.
Follow suit. Do you know what I mean? And it worked out really well, didn't it? Yeah.
Love it.
Good.
Have a safe fly home, guys.
Cheers, mate.
Martin Foran, I was the deputy team leader for the deployment.
Yeah, hello, my name's Kevin Wright and I was a crew member of part of Blue 2 team.
Scott Merrills, crew member, Blue 2.
So, Scott, you were part of some of the teams doing some of the serious shoring work out there. How did you find the heavy deployment? What sort of challenges did we have to face? And how did you find the venues? The first time you've been to the Kosovo one?
Yeah, first time being to Kosovo. Really, really good venue. You can tell they've put a lot of effort into the site. The shoring had its challenges. That was more because we didn't have our own cache.
Yeah.
So we were using their equipment. The timber wasn't our usual type of timber, so the cuts were a bit strange. We're used to using 4x4.
Yeah.
We were 4x3 or 4x3.5.
4x3 and a bit.
Yeah. So that had its challenges.
Yeah.
But again, the team camaraderie within our team is what was our greatest success, really.
So it was a full sort of 36-hour thing, and mostly in sort of 27, 28 degrees. How did you guys sort of manage the welfare, the stress? You say nobody sort of lost. I know we've got a pretty good sort of recruitment side of things where, and I know Martin's really heavily involved in that tries to get rid of any of them people that hate a little bit of arduous working. But was there any of that sort of stuff? Did you see any of it flare up? How did the welfare go?
No, not at all. In all fairness, our team leader, our ops commander, so to speak, was Jim.
Yeah.
Really, really good at putting in regular welfare
Jim Davidson.
breaks. Yes.
Yeah, solid leader.
Really good at regulating welfare breaks, making sure, being that pair of eyes, so you can sometimes get a bit drawn in. You might be on a tool and you're just chipping away and you're just drawn in, and then Jim's there tapping on your shoulder saying, come on, 5 minutes, or Kev, who were our team leader, tapping on your shoulder saying, right, get some shade now, too much. So yeah, really good.
So Kev, when you're sort of looking at that aspect of crew leader and when you sit in that sort of role within it, how do you manage that leadership style? What's your own sort of personal leadership style? What do you like about the leaders that you sort of admire and you've seen good ones?
I mean, my personal leadership style, I think it's just a lead from the front, confident. First rule of being in charge, you look like you're in charge.
Look like you're in charge again. So that command presence.
Yeah, it is command presence really, isn't it? And if you look like you're in charge, people will follow you. And that's just the way of doing it. Yeah, I mean, generally lead from the front anyway. Yeah. I get stuck in and people just naturally follow you, don't they? So it's...
Do you have to be an expert in the field to be a leader?
I mean, an expert is quite a bespoke saying, isn't it? An expert. I mean, you've got to know what you're doing.
Yep.
Of course you do. Otherwise, people.
Do you need to be the most knowledgeable member of the team to be the leader, though?
No, you don't need to be knowledgeable. You can't be. You can't know everything about
Some people
everything.
feel like they need to, though. Sometimes you can see that, and I know we don't have a lot of it in ISAR at all.
In the team, we have specialisms, like you mentioned. We've got there timber shorer. I'm not timber shorer.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we had a very competent timber shorer in my team.
Yeah.
And that's what, as a leader, that's where you turn to. You take advice from your specialists, but it's still you that then decides, right, that's a good plan. This is how we're going to achieve that plan.
Yeah.
So you don't have to know everything. You can't know everything.
Out of the scenarios that we did, which one did you find most challenging or most enjoyable or something different? Because you haven't been to this site before, have you?
I've not been to this site before, no. I mean, I think they was all equally challenging in their own unique kind of way.
Yeah.
They all put in things that, how are we going to achieve this, how are we going to achieve that? But as a team, we come together, we thrash it out, and we decide on the best method, and then everybody's happy, thumbs up, and away we go. And that's how we work.
How long have you been in ISAR now?
I'd say 5 years.
5 years?
Yes, yeah.
So do you have the opportunity to deploy with anything yet?
I've not deployed, but I went to Sicily a couple of years ago for the EU Mod X, which was again a good experience, and I've done a few of the trips.
Yeah.
But this was a really, really, really good learning experience for me.
Yeah.
I was performing a little bit of a command role, more shadowing our commander, Jim Davidson.
Yeah.
Picked up loads of great, learning opportunities from Jim that hopefully I can take forward myself. Yeah.
What's one or two things you think that Jim does really well?
Again, his command presence,
Okay.
and obviously he's very knowledgeable about how things work on the Rubble Pile, just the whole how things work as in ISAR. So yeah, he's great to learn from.
He's a
and
great guy.
Yeah, and he's like you say, he's got great command presence, and you follow him. One of the people you follow into battle, so to
Mate,
speak.
100%. He's the one of those I will go to war with
Yeah,
any
yeah,
day.
definitely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Love it.
So,
Thank you,
yeah.
brother. Martin, how are you, handsome?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. I'm really good, mate.
I'm tired.
You're tired? Man, it's been a long exercise. It's been. I always think like things like this, like that sort of death by 1,000 cuts. And what I mean by that is every day, because you continue to sweat, you're eating different food, you're not sleeping perfectly.
Yeah.
It's not completely sustainable. You slowly get weaker and weaker if you're not kind of careful.
Yeah.
You were part of the command and control team.
Yes,
this
that's
time, weren't
right.
you?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah, it was good. First time for me doing the deputy team leader role, so different slant on what I'm used to, more normal, more ops normally for me out on the incident ground. So it was interesting to see the dynamics back and get the support from the command and control team. So obviously, like you've just been mentioning to Kev there. You don't have to be the most knowledgeable person. That's absolutely 100% the case in my role as the deputy team leader, but relying heavily on the command team that do this a lot and are extremely competent. So,
Comms was a real challenge over here. So we usually used to that sort of pace system, but we didn't have any Wi-Fi when we got there. We didn't have all of our cache that we'd usually be used to.
Yeah.
How did we kind of manage that situation, and what would we do differently if there was any learnings from it?
I think we've learnt a lot about the resilience of the comms that we've got. We've got fallback comms with sat phones and the Garmin InReaches. So I think the first thing is we've got to trust the teams out on the fire ground and on the work sites and not get too stressed about needing sit reps from them constantly.
Yeah.
They've got the resilience in the communications that they have with them. Should anything go wrong, they can quickly get in touch with us. But like you just said, it was difficult. Primary comms with UHF or VHF was challenging, same as with mobile phones. But again, brilliant training. Absolutely real world problem. Whether it's training exercise or under deployment, real world problem. Some of the command and control guys, absolute experts in the field. They actually managed to fix the issue with the mobile phones.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the workaround, if we were able to share it?
It was all to do with which network we were on.
Okay.
And if we're piggybacking onto a different network, sometimes if that's not the most preferred network in the country, it can make it difficult for the piggyback network to communicate. So, new one on me.
Nice
That's why we've
pivot.
got the command. That's why we've got the command and control guys.
Now, we saw a lot of new members of the team out on this. Obviously, you don't run control of Illowit, but you run a lot of the recruitment side of stuff.
Yeah.
What's it like to see people that have been on the recruitment and you think they're going to be a good egg in the team, and now you see them coming onto it?
It's great.
How did it sort of reinforce your beliefs,
Yeah,
and
it's
what's the
great.
plans for recruitment moving forward?
I always try and make a conscious effort to ask people whether or not the recruitment that we're running is relevant to what we've just done, which is very, very close to
100%.
in issues to a deployment. So
I think we needed about 24 hours more rain and horrible wind to try and stand up to anything that you've given people every single year. But no, it was close, wasn't it? It was really good.
Well, if we've done 90 hours,
something like that,
great, because you can establish a battle rhythm. You can learn in the
100%.
first days. If you're not doing something quite right or you're unsure, you can give things a go. You can learn, take on board the new information, and then put that into practice. Albeit you're getting tired, but we know we've got the right people because we've passed recruitment and selection. So we've got the drive, we've got that sparkle in the eye, haven't we? We've got that
100%.
The humour and the silliness that goes along with the drive and the passion and the seriousness when we turn it on. So yeah, brilliant.
No one's going to hold you accountable for it, but every time we have an episode about ISAR, someone always mentions, how do I get into the team? What's the best thing? What's this? What's that? What's the other? Do we know what the plans are for recruitment? Because I know we've got members retiring. Do you think we're going to run another course this year, next year?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. A couple of recruitments back end of this year.
Really?
EMT are recruiting for new doctors. So we're going to run one for them as well. So we're probably looking at 3 recruitments this year, maybe one in March next year. So we're just going to firm up the dates, and depending on which services need what numbers, that'll dictate how many recruitments we do and how many people we put on the process.
So if people are hearing it, lean into your coordinator, try and find out who that person is in your service,
100%.
getting him on list.
Yeah, 100%.
Beautiful. Love it. Cheers, man.
My name's Dave Widdop. I've been a member of the DS staff here, overseeing the initial setup and then working with the crews in close proximity the last 3 or 4 days.
How did you find it?
it's been challenging. Like anything else, a sort of project of this magnitude requires a great amount of planning, but I'm very fortunate to work with yourself among others, a very close-knit DS team, and we brought it to a very successful conclusion.
Absolutely. How did you find the aspect of comms over there? Because comms was challenging. We obviously didn't have our cash with us. We had to try and sort of mix and match, improvise, adapt, overcome, as ISAR tend to do best.
If you look at anything, certainly in our fire service world, the one thing that always historically falls down is comms. And I can quite happily say to you that this was it didn't let us down.
No.
Our comms did fail on many, many occasions, but what do we do? The ethos of international search and rescue is we adapt and we overcome, do we not?
Yeah.
And that's what we did on this occasion, and we made it work.
We saw a number of recruits. I was speaking to Martin Fran previously about people that he'd seen on the recruitment who have now come through into the teams, taking on different roles. Who were some of the teams you were most impressed with? We saw some great leaders from Davidson to Chastity to Rob to there was loads of really powerful individuals out there. What were the sort of things, whether it's team dynamics or the way that the team performed, what were some of the things that really impressed you out there?
It will be incredibly easy for me to say my Lancashire team were far
They were pretty strong, to be fair.
They were pretty strong, and you've thrown some names at me there. I was equally impressed with all. Of course, I'm going to take a very neutral, boring view of that. But you touched on the fact that we've seen a lot of kids coming through who were on selection. Certainly, I've been working with yourself for the last couple of years as DS. So to see them come through from selection, to see them migrate into national exercises, and then fundamentally take it on to sort of grow that ISAR arm, if you will, and take it to international standard, and to see how successful they have worked this week has been, for myself, incredibly satisfying.
You have not got long for the ISAR world. What are you going to miss most about it? Because would this be one of your last exercises, do you think?
Potentially one of my last exercises.
Are you going to join us for one of the end of year recruitments? Because Martin reckons we're running a couple more.
I'd be more than happy to come back as a guest DS for that.
We'd love to have you.
So what will I miss most? My goodness, how long have we got?
Yeah.
I've been involved with ISAR. They've got some background music as well.
There you go.
To help me with my answer.
Flares out.
Fundamentally, ISAR has been a family.
Yeah.
It's been a family, and I've seen it grow. I've been involved with it for 25 years. I've been lucky enough to deploy on a number of occasions. I know we spoke about that previously. I think, to answer your question, very simplistic, it's the people. It doesn't matter. Some of them speak very funny because from different places. As I previously mentioned to you, I'm from the north, from Mordor.
Mordor, where we throw rocks at the moon.
Just north of the wall. But it doesn't really matter. We all speak in different tongues, shall we say.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, we're one character.
Yeah.
We're committed. We're passionate. We're driven.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to miss most.
Love it. Thank you, brother.
Never a problem.
My name's Richard Cutler, so I'm from Lancashire. I've been on the ISAR team for 3 years now, and I was on Blue 2 as an operator in the team.
Love it. So, Rich, as part of the Blue team, you were involved in a wide series of jobs. I know you've got some really strong skills when it comes to things like rope and stuff like that. Is this first time to Kosovo?
First time to Kosovo, and I'm amazed at the site, amazed at the country. Brilliant, real hospitable people at the site, the base, all the KSF supporting staff that have put together this, along with the DS. It's been an incredible experience, really has. It's been intense. Intentionally intense, I think. It's been really good. It's been really enjoyable.
You had a number of newer people in the team. Now, from a USAR perspective, as I already sort of referenced, you've got a massive amount of experience. I saw this exercise a little bit, because there's some people who haven't even done the USAR 2 yet. Do you know what I mean? And we had them with us. So I saw you doing a lot of probably informal mentoring, coaching.
Yeah.
It was great to be able to see a lot of that out there.
So I've been a firefighter for 12 years. I've been on the ISAR team now 3-4 years now.
Yep.
But I've spent a lot of time at St Anne's, my station, as a rope instructor. I do a lot of coaching, mentoring with that sort of rope aspect, and it transfers. We give them the opportunities to work and sort of say, right, well, have a think. How should we approach this? What do you reckon? Let them have the cogs turning a little bit, and then we can take it from there and go, right, okay, you can do it that way. You can look at the easy way to do things, or you can take a slightly more technical way of doing something, but there's an opportunity there for people to really learn from the experience and say, like I've done rope for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that I can do something that'll take 10 minutes.
Yes,
And
I love
it's not
that.
You're not paying for the 10 minutes, you're paying for the 10 years.
That's the old. You heard the Picasso side of that? Was it Picasso?
Yeah.
I think it was Picasso, where he was in the restaurant and writing the note on the napkin, or he was drawing a sketch on the napkin, wasn't he? And then as he was about to leave, there was a lady watching him. She said, "Oh, can I have the drawing on the napkin?" And he says, "Absolutely, £20,000." She said, "What? That just took you 5 minutes." She says, "No, that's taken me 40 years."
Yes.
And then you obviously just threw it in the bin. But it's that aspect of it, isn't it? It's that colossal, you're like the tip of the iceberg. You've got those 10 years of different experiences and training courses and the college and the job and the operational side of it. All of that folds into those layers of your risk assessment for effectively.
Massively. And that's the thing. We're going to be, I don't want to say losing, but it is the key word. We're losing all that experience.
Hemorrhaging it, absolutely.
We need to make sure that gets folded through. We implement that into the team, integrate it into everything that we do, so that the younger generations, like I say, there was lads on our team that had only done their UKISAR ones, getting them hands-on with lads that have done 20 years on UKISAR teams. They've done been there, done it, got the all the tricks up their sleeve. They don't need the fob guide.
Yeah.
It's in the back of their brain.
Now, I know you've done it for 10 years, but when I look at both ends of the spectrum here, we've got people such as Dave who are coming out of the service. Yes, you've already done a decade, but you're still very, very young in the grand scheme of things. So when I look at the ISAR team, and I think you're doing the coaching, the mentoring, so you already have so many of those natural leadership qualities.
Yeah, and that's it. I like the teaching aspect of it. So that's why I like to support as much as I can, take the opportunity to be DS, so any opportunity like that, because it is... I feel like I can teach people quite easily, and if I can't teach someone something, it's a slight on me not being able to teach it right. It's not their inability to learn.
I love that.
It's just teaching it the way that they need to learn.
You've got to have another way to say it, and another way to say it, and another way to say it.
Yeah.
I forget who said it, but if you know your material as good as you could, then you should be able to explain it to a child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the subject, if you are able to teach anything, you should be able to take someone off the street and go, right, I can take you from there to here, and it'll be okay, because I will figure out how you need to learn. Once I figure out how you need to learn, everything else will go there. The knowledge is there, it's how you impart it on someone
I'll also
else.
learn about who you are, because then I can take you from what you know to what you don't know. We can start where you are with you, and then bring you to where you need to be.
And that's it, and that's what we're doing. We're looking at people. So we've had lads that are just on their UKISAR ones, that are on the team. It's like, okay, show me what you've got so I know where to start, and we can take you from there to where we want you to be and where you want to be. And
so if I had to ask you some of the great characteristics of a great teacher or a great mentor or a great instructor, what would they be?
They've got beautiful eyes.
He's looking straight at Mr. Whittam. What would be some of those characteristics?
Okay, so you do need to be able to lead from the front, and that's it. The key one for me is leading from the front. Okay. It's not a case of cracking the whip.
Okay.
No one cracks the whip and makes things happen. We're not drilling by numbers.
Yeah.
This is coaching 101. Let's just figure out how you need to teach someone and impart that, and that's it. For me, the leadership side is great aspect to it, but lots of people can talk. It's how you talk to someone to make them listen.
Yeah, and you've got to have a lot of humility. You've got to come down to where they are. Don't preach at someone from up on high.
Yes.
So I am the fountain of all knowledge. Bow before me. Well,
exactly. And that's it. No one wants to listen to someone because they're the loudest voice in the room.
Yes.
You want to listen to them because they've got something that you need.
How do you speak so people want to listen to you?
Exactly.
That's the crucial aspect of it, isn't it?
Perfect wording.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.